Welcome to another episode of Make Mental Health Matter. If this is your first time watching and you happen to be watching on YouTube, make sure you click down that subscribe button. If you are watching on any of the streaming platforms like E360, Roku, Apple Fire, Amazon, whatever it happens to be, make sure you put us into your watch list, wish list, want to watch list. I don't know what it's called, but whatever that might be, just so that you don't miss another episode. Because I promise you, as I say every single week, every single guest that I bring on is incredible. And the stories that they share is something you don't want to miss. I am really excited for my guest this evening. And really, just if this is your first time watching, Wednesdays are the theme are Warrior Wednesdays. I bring on guests who share their journey through whatever experience they've been through in life and really giving you the opportunity to see into other people's lives and maybe identify a little bit in their story of what you've been through, but also give you the information to know how to navigate and go through to really get to that place of hope. That is the ultimate goal, is to give you some hope of whatever you might be experiencing right now and know that you truly are not alone. So without further ado, I want to introduce my guest for this evening, and I'm super excited. Carly, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Kelli.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
Voice is cracking already.
You're good. I always say it's not about perfection. It's just about getting the information out. So I would love for you to share a little bit with the audience about your story and your journey.
Oh boy, where do we start? There's so many levels to it. But I'll kind of start with the now I'll just start and see where it goes. So as someone who's neurodivergent, I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 19. I managed to get through high school and um, skating through. There were signs, but in the 90s, women didn't seem to have ADHD, so people weren't checking for it, right? But when I moved to Colorado from Illinois and went to college, failed my first semester, and my parents went, "What? She's never failed." So they got me into therapy, and the therapist went, I think you have ADHD. And that moving forward got me into psychiatry, and they said, "Oh, yeah, you do." I mean, I literally took a book called Driven to Distraction to the psychiatrist with everything I experienced checked off and said, "This is me." And he went, "Oh, yep, here you go." It testing is a lot more rigorous now than it was then. But anyway, so that's been a journey. But I say that because with ADHD comes depression. And I was depressed most of my teenage years and childhood. So I come home from school every afternoon and take long naps because I was depressed. And so that was kind of a warning sign that I guess no one really, in hindsight. So I start there because that's something I've always struggled with. And then in 2016 was kind of where the wall hit the fan, so to speak. It was the hardest year of my life. I had moved 6 times, which is every 2 months. My life had moved at such a fast pace that I didn't ever have time to sit down and process it. You are literally just in survival mode constantly. I had people that year who I thought were friends sabotaging me. I moved in with someone who I thought was a friend, knowing I had my own business. I was coaching, and she was not paying the internet bill, so the internet was getting shut off. A little hard to coach when you're in a dead zone and there's no internet. Or she'd like walk past when I was on Zoom with a client. So like had to leave that situation. Like, and there's just repeated situations. And came December that year, I'd gone to a conference in California, and I wasn't feeling right, but my brother's dog, who I was really close with, had just passed away. So I just chopped it up to that. I didn't really want to talk to people, and that's not me. I mean, Kelli's known me for a long time. That is not me. And so I got back from that conference, and a few days later went to a doctor's appointment. And the doctor gave me the sheet about depression, started asking me just routine questions, and it spurred a 3-day crying experience that I could not stop. I would just start crying. I couldn't stop it. Then it would slow down. Then it'd come back up. And it was like all of the pain that I hadn't processed all year showed up in those 3 days. And by the third day, Friday, there was so much pain running through my body that I couldn't handle it anymore. And it's funny, I didn't think I'd get emotional talking about this because I didn't a couple weeks ago, and here I am. Which goes to show you, you never know in your healing journey where the emotions are going to show up. So with that said, came that Friday, I didn't know. All I could think of was getting in my car, driving up I-70 and driving off of it. I called a friend that day and told her what was going on. She was a social worker at the time. And of course, because she is licensed, she had to take care of it. So she called the crisis line and connected me with them, finished her job, what she was doing at her job. They calmed me down. They actually were like, what is something you like to do right now? And I said, that'll make you laugh. And I said, I like to watch Fuller House. So I actually watched Fuller House to, excuse me, shift my energy. To get me out of that crisis kind of state. So they were able to calm me down enough. And then Dee came to the house and picked me up and took me to a crisis unit that day. The one we went to was full. So I ended up in the one in Aurora. And I tell you, that was apparently this story needs to get out and someone doesn't want it out. And boy, was that an awakening. I felt like I walked into the 90s movie Girl Interrupted. The mattresses were plastic. The food was all processed crap. It was scary. And thinking about it now and knowing what I know now, you wonder why mental health is where it is in this state, because that place was not helpful for me. So I ended up spending 24 hours there. I ended up getting last on the list to see a therapist the next day. And the group therapy classes were basically what I was teaching people while I was coaching at that time. So it was far under the help I needed. It was about being grateful and gratitude and forgiveness. And I was like, yeah, that's what I teach people. And I was like, I need to talk about someone about why my life's been a shithole for the last year. So, um, so anyway, I ended up agreeing with the therapist to leave there because it was a volunteer kind of place. It wasn't a psych hold. That if I went to their walk-in therapy place at Aurora Mental Health for the next following 3 business days, and therefore I was assigned a therapist, that I could leave. So that is what we did. And there was a snowstorm the night I landed in there. So I had a friend come pick me up and take me home that night in the midst of all the snow. And I did go to the therapist, and it was a rocky road to get to the therapist and get on the antidepressants. There was another, I wouldn't say suicide attempt, but I got that low again in between. My family was actually there that time to kind of reel me back in. And then, what else? Oh, so then I ended up seeing a therapist come January of that year, and then, or the following year. And then in 2019, I graduated off of antidepressants. And I've been seeing a therapist ever since. However, I see him instead of every week, about every 3 weeks now. So about once a month maintenance, primarily to talk about my mother, but that's a whole nother story that we might get into, but that's fine. And to kind of lead into this, my health journey has been even crazier since, to believe it or not. In 2018, I learned I had a deadly infection in my colon. It came back in 2019 and then was gone for 2 years and came back in 2021 with a vengeance. And I was fighting for my life. Basically from March of 2021 till January of this year. And I tell you, having your gut biome screwed with and completely gutted, pun intended, messes with your mental health. My words were getting scrambled. I was forgetting things that I normally wouldn't forget, like times and switching things, words. I was stuttering. Let's see, what else? I got to really low places again when I felt like no one was there for me. So that was fun. But now that my gut biome is back intact, life is great again. So that's kind of, I guess I spent 15 minutes telling that story, but wow. So that's kind of been my mental health journey.
I mean, first and foremost, thank you for sharing that. I know that I know a lot of your story, but I don't know all of the story. And I was trying to think back, when we had originally met, and I know it's been so many years that, time goes by so fast, but I have seen through the last couple of years, how you have been physically struggling and going through these different things, and then has these shifts happen. And it is unfortunate, especially when you go to a facility and it's just not helpful. But I think as you came out and being able to go to therapists and really having somebody that could support you was really important. But you need to be able to talk about the real things, right? Not just gratitude or those things that you're training necessarily. So I just, first and foremost.
But it's really funny. It's my therapist and I talked about politics a lot. I mean, it's interesting. I think it's, yes, there is space for talking about deep things, but there's also space for talking to someone in therapy about things you can't always talk to people about.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's easier to like just have normal conversations versus have to always go deep.
I mean, and being an empath, and at that time in the world, I was picking up all the energies of everyone feeling what was about to happen in our world in that time in life. So we had a new president elected, and people had a lot of feelings about it.
Yeah. I'm curious, like since you mentioned empath, it has been a topic that I think a lot of people might be confused about in a way and or just don't quite understand it. So could you just explain a little bit like what does it mean to be an empath?
Oh, definitely. I love talking about that subject. So an empath is basically means you're a person who's super sensitive to other people's energies. I can pick up on other people's energies. I can feel what they're feeling. Sometimes people are like, if you force me to feel it, sometimes I'm like, no. But so like, for example, when I'm coaching someone, especially, and let me preface this, I don't really coach people anymore. But Spirit's kind of leaning me back into it. So here we are. But like just like I could feel what, when they were going through their transformation process. So like where they were, where we were going down, and then when the light came back. So, or like I can walk into a room and feel when someone's not so on the up and up, or when to stay away from someone, or like if there's going to be a big shift in energies. So yeah, I can take on, and I can also personally take on other people's energies. It's a crazy kind of way of living, but once you kind of once you understand it and can protect yourself, that's when the magic is. But in 2016, I was not there.
Yeah, it's definitely, I have had friends in the past say, I mean, like we've had conversations around being an empath, and I really truly believe in a way I am very similar in the nature of when I was in a corporate position. I like the negativity really, really dragged me down. So, like everything that I do, I tried to be as positive as possible because I would absorb all of that. And then I would go home and I literally had nothing left. Like that's how I felt. And then when I could shift it a little bit of like, well, let's be more positive, like not everything has to be negative, right? When I was able to shift that, then I felt like I actually had a little bit more. And I knew that that's why I needed to leave that corporate position because it wasn't right for me. Although I had been there for 5 years, it was just not in alignment. And I didn't understand that until I found people like you that could really help me understand like what this means to embody that energy, right? But then I love how you just said is there is a way to protect yourself, but you also like you can lean into it and you can learn how to not take on everybody's energies, but also um be aware of it. And I think that's
Yeah.
pretty
Well,
cool.
and it's a practice too, and you have to bring in tools. So like I have, so, and I mean, there's listeners who will probably disagree with this, but I think the earth gives us tools to handle everything. So crystals are a great way to do it. So like black crystals like onyx and black tourmaline help you ground. So grounding yourself always is a great way to protect you from other people's energies. So mine's sitting right there about to fall apart, so I don't really wear it anymore, but I do have a black tourmaline bracelet. And when I started wearing it, I was like, this is my superpower bracelet, because because once I started wearing it, my life was so different because I was like, who is this person? Because it was starting to be me instead of everyone else.
Yeah. And I also like knowing about your physical health and how that really affected your mental health, and then talking about the gut biomes, which was also something that I didn't understand until I actually was having migraines constantly due to like hormone shifts, but I didn't understand the gut biomes thing either. And I think a lot of people are confused about that. So, what I want to do, we're going to go to a quick sponsored break. And when we come back, maybe we can talk a little bit about gut biomes, what that means. And then we'll see where it goes from there.
Oh, fun. Because I
So
love talking about that.
cool. But we'll be right back after this sponsored break. And like that, we're back. So if you happen to be just joining now, thank you so much for watching. I have my guest Carly Stein on with me today, and if this is your first time watching, please make sure that you click down the subscribe button or watch or wish list, whatever you call it. But we have been talking about Carly's story, her journey through mental health challenges, really getting to this low of low with ADHD, but then also going into depression and having suicidal ideation, and how this has affected or been affecting mental health as related to physical ailments that she had. And we started talking about a little bit about gut biomes. And I wanted to kind of transition a little bit into that because I don't think that we have this conversation enough. I don't think people understand how physical affects mental and specifically the gut, because I know your gut really is that place of safety, it's security. Like that's where a lot of all of that comes from. And when the gut isn't in alignment or functioning properly, there's a lot of other things that can manifest too. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Thanks. So I'm not sure I was clear earlier about what I contracted. In 2018, I contracted C. diff from taking antibiotics. And for those who don't know, C. diff is a short term for something much longer. And it's funny, I talk about poop all the time now. So I've ended the stigma in my brain about poop. So if you don't like talking about poop, we're about to do it. Fair warning. I was at a wedding a few weeks ago talking about this, and everyone was eating, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So anyway, I think, and side note, like it's just, I think researchers are just learning and discovering the connection between the brain and the gut and gut health. I had a bad case of bronchitis in 2018, which they put me on antibiotics. And then afterwards I was having gut issues, but I just chopped it up to, I'd been on Adderall for so long. My liver was a mess, whatever, no big deal. So then in July of 2015, I had I woke up July 15th at like 2 a.m. with food poisoning, so I thought, and was a mess. And as the day was going on, you know, when you have food poisoning, they think you feel better as it's coming out. But I wasn't feeling better. 12 hours later, I was worse. So I posted on Facebook, someone send me positive energy, Reiki, whatever. And someone tagged a very good friend of mine. And they tapped into my body energetically and said, get to the ER and get there now. And I was apparently hours away from dying. I had salmonella poisoning and C. diff. And the C. diff had been sitting in my body for 5 months. And for those of you who don't know, C. diff is a deadly infection in the colon. So they put me on antibiotics, and I was fine. But that's when I started to learn that that's when the gut connection, brain connection got so real. I was, one morning, my boss called me at like 6:30 and she's like, where are you? And I was like, in bed. She's like, you're supposed to be at work. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not supposed to be until 2. And she goes, the schedule said you're supposed to be here at 6. And my brain had completely flip-flopped it. And that's because my gut biome had been completely wiped out. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah. And so, like I said, I was slurring words, having a stutter, all sorts of crazy things. So time went on, things got better. That's when I learned I had to be taking a probiotic every freaking day. And then it came back in 2019, same story. Then, I was fine. Pandemic hit. No one got sick from anything else during the pandemic. I joke. I know that's not true, but and then March of 2021, I take a friend to the ER, and days later, my stomach blows up like a balloon and I'm having diarrhea again. And I didn't even think it was C. diff. I was like, something's wrong though. So 3 weeks later, test, sure enough, it's C. diff. But this time, the symptoms don't go away. I tested positive in 2021 3 times. But the whole time I look like I'm 9 months pregnant. Brain is a mess. And it was bad. Diarrhea for almost a year. And December of that year, because I was testing negative, they weren't able to give me a fecal transplant, even though they knew that was the thing I was going to need. But UC Health was doing a study, and I was going to be able to get in to the study. But the study was doing a fecal transplant via enema and not colonoscopy. So we did that January 13th of 2022, and it worked. And the bloating went down and I felt great. And then I got food poisoning in June of 2022. I know, it's like one sick joke, right? And when I tested positive for the food poisoning, it came back positive for C. diff. And they called me and said, we want you to come back in and give us another test. We're not positive that you actually have a C. diff infection. So I did, and that actually did come back negative. So the rapid test was picking up antibodies. but was suspicious because I was testing negative for C. diff when I had the fecal transplant.
Yeah.
But things never went back to normal after that. And in October, I tested positive again for C. diff. So I laugh because it's surreal. I mean, to face death 6 times is a lot. Like I even said to my therapist at one point, oh my God, my life is finally getting good. And here I am going to die. And he said, wow, that's quite a limiting belief. But it was real. The possibility that I could die was there right in front of me. And it was there multiple times. And the last time was the scariest. They put me on the strongest antibiotic you could be put on. It's called Difficid. It's so strong that FDA only allows you to be on it for 10 days. They gave me an infusion, as Kelli knows. We were on a conference call while I was in the infusion room. And that didn't work either. And it was scary. I mean, I went all out for my Halloween costume last year, and I never do that. But I thought this could be my last one. So yeah, facing death really, really affects your mental health. And I mean, I know we were on the gut biome, but I think this is going in a different direction.
That's okay.
So yeah, and to bring it back. So I ended up having the fecal transplant a year and a week after the first one. And where are we? In 5 days, it'll be 8 months after, and so far it is a success. So, and now I'm on a health transformation journey. We are, I've been addressing the emotional reasons of why I got sick in the first place. So that's been a fun journey we could talk about. But yeah, let's kind of dive a little bit back into the gut biome. So the researchers are now saying that the gut biomes are actually your second brain. And when that's not intact, it's going to affect up here. And I can prove it. I'm like, I've experienced it and I've lived it. And as I said before, I was stuttering. I was losing words. I was going I'm a professional artist, as you can see, and I'd have to write down, normally I know what commission or what painting is going to who or what I'm doing, and I'd have to write it down so I wasn't forgetting. And things I normally couldn't keep track of, or could keep track of, I wasn't able to keep track of when I was on antibiotics.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And I know I watched a lot of that journey as you were going through, and I honestly, even being on this side, we were on a Zoom when you were doing your infusion, and I honestly didn't realize how serious it was, right? I don't know a ton about C. diff. That was the first time I had heard it, and so I did research after you were talking about it, and I was like, I didn't quite understand it, right? it is this, I wouldn't call it a disease. It's like a bacteria, basically, kind of. But it's very, very serious, and people can die from it. And I mean, it's like the whole body connection. And when things are not running as they should, that's going to, like you said, affect your mental health, right? And I didn't realize the stuttering and the memory loss and the not remembering and doing all those things and how they're all connected. It is very fascinating. And I know, like, through what I have researched, right? Like, we have three brains. It's our head, our heart, and our gut. But if all of them are not in alignment and they're not all talking to each other, you're gonna have challenges that can move into physical challenges. So um first and foremost, thank you for being vulnerable, because I know it's
You're
not
welcome.
always easy to tell our stories and, like, relive those moments and put yourself back into that space where, like, you didn't know if you were going to live another day. You didn't know if that was going to be your last Halloween. And thank God that everything has gone how it is, because I know, like, our friendship and you. So Carly is actually on my board for BCC Evolution and has been huge in our events and really, like, helping us as a board. We talked about energy, so, like, creating that powerful energy. It's not just, like, it's not just like any other board, any other nonprofit board, but Carly just brings in this extra inspiration into, like, the creative nature and bringing the energy. Like, it's really centered around the energy and how you've shifted even over the years. I mean, many, many years ago when we met, like, this Carly now is so much different from the Carly that I met back in the day, right? Like, you stand out very powerful and very um heart-centered and aware of everything and everybody around you. And so I am glad that everything has worked out. And I know that it's still one of those things that might be scary, that might come up, right? Because you never know. Like, it's been so many years that you've gone through and had to positive and negative, and then positive and negative, and, like, that's just hard on your mental health too. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing all of that. And we in my house, we talk about poop all the time too, so I feel you.
Yeah, I mean, you do live with two boys, so yes.
Yes, and a stepdaughter who is kind of like a frat boy anyway, so poop's like
Yeah,
our topic of conversation.
right.
But it's important. Like, I think, again, this is a conversation that you wouldn't just normally, like, go out and talk about, but it is an important conversation to be had, to understand, like, no matter what we're going through in life, right? Like, there's, okay, pun intended, there's shitty things that happen to us.
Right.
And there is those moments that come up that I don't know if I'm going to survive. I don't know if I want to be alive, right? Like, there's all these little moments, and I'm curious, what is that thing other than, like, your friend tapping into your energy and being like, go to the hospital? But what is if there is one thing, or maybe it's multiple things, but what is the thing that has helped you the most?
So I live by, like, two mantras. One is trust God, make art. And the other is the universe rewards those who show up.
Mhm.
So, and the last time I was sick, those two were much harder to live by than the previous. I had a lot more energy, but this time they hit me with the big guns before and instead of leading me up to them. So I didn't have the energy that I did previously, but also community. I had to lean on community. We started a GoFundMe because the medication they wanted to put me on, he wanted to put me on for 30 days. The FDA only allows you to be on it for 10 days. So when we got news of that, I said, I need a GoFundMe. I said, I'm not going to be able to work. I'm going to be sleeping for a month. So people, someone stepped up and set up a GoFundMe and people donated. I actually had 13 shows and events set up at the time of diagnosis. So I said, I'm not going to have the energy to lift my stuff. I'm not going to be able to do it. I need help. So I had like a spreadsheet of people who signed up to help. And sometimes they came and picked me up and helped and took me to places. So yeah, I had to lean on community. So that's, I guess it was another big thing. I have learned a lot in my life. And I don't say this to throw them under the bus because I don't want to. But my family's never been huge and I say my immediate family in showing up physically to help. They show up in other ways. And so, but at that time I needed them to show up and they weren't there. So like my brother left town for Christmas and I was alone and it was devastating. And he didn't realize how sick I was. I mean, we have discussed it and said our piece with it since, but I was really hurt. And he said, I didn't realize it was that serious. So that's why he felt comfortable leaving town. And I was like, you didn't realize this could be it. So yeah, so yeah, I was, a mess between New Year's and Christmas last year because I felt very alone because that's like the time everyone's with their family. And I was like, just dying over here.
Yeah, I'm curious, like the question that kind of pops in my head with that is it possible that in a way you were kind of downplaying the seriousness, or was it maybe that those around you didn't quite, well, like you said, your brother didn't quite fully understand. And as you're going through these things, I know it is hard, right, to ask for help, and it's hard to like really express the seriousness sometimes.
I guess there's a weird place in consciousness about it. So like you don't want to project or manifest the death, but it is also a reality. So you don't want to talk about it, but in your head, it is something that is possible. So it is hard to talk about that part. It's all, I mean, I guess you can compare it to someone who has cancer, but cancer is more mainstream.
Right.
But same thing, like, death is a reality, but there's treatments for it, right? Yeah. But because everyone knows how serious cancer is, they get it. But because C. diff, and not only that, a lot of people get C. diff and it's treated once and it's done. That wasn't the case for me. But when the strongest antibiotic and an infusion don't work, shit gets fucking scary. Excuse my language. It's really fucking scary.
Yeah. Well, and I know when you told me that you would have to be on it for 30 days, I was like, what? Like, that's a long time. So yeah, I mean, I don't think people realize as you're going even through like physical ailments, right? Like it's we can't like schedule and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to shut down my life for 30 days, you know, because I have to be on the strongest antibiotic. And I love how you did also mention the community aspect, right? Like you had to reach out to people and have them help you. And I know that you still tried to do things also. And you made the best of the situation that you were going through. But that's why I love that you came on and are able to share your journey, because it hasn't been just like puppy dogs and rainbows, right? Like it's real life, real things happen. And this is just another thing to be aware of. It's not cancer. It's not another diagnosis, right? Like, it's something that we don't talk about, nor do a lot of people know about.
Right.
So,
and not only that, C. diff is contagious. So I had to do extra precautions because I still had to work. I still had bills I had to pay. So, and especially during the holidays, November was fine with donations, but once December hit and everyone was focused on the holidays, those were done. So, like I was bringing Lysol and Clorox wipes everywhere with me and wiping everything down after I went to the bathroom, and brought alcohol wipes around when it sold something, so stuff was clean.
Yeah, I didn't realize how contagious it was either till, of course, after I started researching, knowing a little bit more about it. So,
yeah.
Well, I, again, just super appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey and giving a little bit more understanding about C. diff in general, but then also being vulnerable as you share your story through having suicidal ideations and really understanding how your mental health played a factor with your physical health and vice versa. And any last words or shares that you want to express?
Oh boy. I mean, there's so many more things I could say. Hey, I guess the one thing I'll say is if you're in the thick of it, this is what a friend said to me. He said, the one thing you taught me, Carly, is no matter what I'm going through, just keep going. He said, you inspire me because no matter what diagnosis you got or whatever you were doing, you just kept going. And I mean, it got me best art class in Denver in 2022, which is kind of cool. So it's, despite it being like the worst health year of my life, cool things did still show up. So, yeah. So just keep going.
Love that. And I would love for you to share a little bit about your art. What do you do specifically?
Oh, yeah. So I am a paint pouring artist, abstract artist. I make and sell art. I also make jewelry. And then I also do art classes. So paint pouring or art parties is really what it is. So we do paint pouring parties. And then a new class I have is called the Bad Art Party for Adults. So that one's a ton of fun. It's a way to tap into your out of box thinking and let your inner child just have fun. And then I also do some spiritual classes like the intuitive painting experience. And then I'm changing the date, but I'll have, I'm starting to work with a sound bath healer and doing painting with that. And next year we'll be doing healing arts retreats.
Yeah, I've been saying this forever and I should probably just come, but I want to go to one of the paint pouring classes. They're super cool. I mean, and Carly makes big, small, all sizes, and you can learn how to paint pour, which is a really interesting, cool technique. Not one that I had ever seen or experienced till I really started learning more about your artwork. So if somebody wants to, how can they find you?
Yep. So paintpouringdenver.com is where my classes are. You can always find me on my Facebook page, Carly Stein. I have like a public page, so everything I post is pretty pretty crazy. I think I'm pretty hilarious too. So Kelly would agree. um, so I post a lot about just random things that happen in my life, like the very funny conversation I heard on the way home, driving home the other night. And then I was very intrigued and didn't get to hear the rest. Uh, and just funny stuff there. And then of course I always post my art and art happenings. Like I have an art reception tonight. Of course, this will be aired after that, but that's okay. And actually, while this is airing, we will be paint pouring in Parker. So so that's pretty exciting. And then I do art shows all over town as well. So
cool. Well, one more time, here is Carly's website. Let me put that up one more time. So paintpouringdenver.com. Carly, thank you so much for coming on. I greatly appreciate you being my guest.
Thank you for having me.
Yay. All right, y'all, that was another amazing episode of Make Mental Health Matter. Again, the Warrior Wednesday is really to share stories and give you insight into people's lives, what they've been through, what they've experienced, and how they've really made it through into that place of hope. Life can be challenging, and sometimes we don't know if we're going to survive. But with community and just showing up and believing and, that place of hope, we can definitely make it through. So if you are in the Colorado area, Denver area, you should definitely search out Carly and do a paint pouring class. She just told me the other day about those bad art classes, and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a good one for me because I am not very creative. So if you happen to be in the area, check her out. And or I just want to say from my heart to hers is that thank you for being on the BCC Evolution board. We definitely are in a much better space to have the energy, the positive energy to really move us forward. And she's in charge of our events moving forward. So, which is awesome because she's much more creative than I am. And as a reminder, BCC Evolution is a 501c3 nonprofit. It is still National Suicide Awareness Month. So if you have not become a warrior for mental health yet, with only a $19 donation or more, you can become a warrior. You can get one of these cool shirts. I happen to wear my shirt, one of these cool shirts, and you are supporting our education for mental health. And all of that money is rolled back into our programs. And this show also, because this is where we give you resources, tools, people, the guests, they share their stories, and hopefully they give you a little bit of information that you can identify with and move you into that place of hope. But as always, if you need extra support, please reach out to us at bccevolution.org. We have a whole trusted resource network of amazing people that want to help you. And as Carly said, community is really important. No matter what you do, make sure that you join me back for the next episode on Monday, because moving forward, I have guests all lined up. So you got me solo, but now moving forward, I have guests that are all lined up. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.